Hey everybody, Adam here from the Tennessee Adult Education Division. I just want to talk in this video about how the TABE test sessions work in the DRC portal and go over a step-by-step process to creating these test sessions and then talk about a few different scenarios that you might want to consider whenever creating these sessions. So here I am, I've logged into the DRC portal and anything that I need to find in the DRC portal is going to be up here under All Applications. And here's my different options where I can look at users and student and test management, which is what we're going to click on here today. And this is going to take me to where I can manage all of my test sessions, which is what I need to click on up here on the top left. So I've clicked on Manage Test Sessions, which will bring me to this screen, which is where I can set all of my criteria and search for different test sessions and then create any new test sessions that I need to create as well. So first, just a quick note on the terminology here. You might see some terms that we may have commonly accepted in Tennessee to mean one thing, but DRC might define them in a slightly different way. So one major theme here in the vernacular is that DRC uses a lot of terms that are based in the K-12 space. For instance, when you see the term district, right up here on the top, they are actually referring to a school district. And then over here, you'll see the term school, and that is actually what we might call a site or a classroom location. So, as such, we just have to make sure that our own infrastructure fits within the pre-existing layout of this system, which is nothing new to adult education, but still important to point out. So here's all of the fields that we need to know before creating our test sessions up here at the top. We see administration, and we just have one option there, which is TABE. So that's good. We'll just make sure that stays there. We see district again, which is, they call it a school district. We'll just call it our local program. And this is where we see all of the different options here. You might not see all of these options. You might just see your own school or your own program here. But I've got all of these options here. So just for fun, let's pick one. Let's choose this one, South Central Tennessee. And then we can look at a listing of all of the different class sites in South Central Tennessee. So again, what they call a school, we might call a site. And just notice that each one of these schools has a different code, a unique number here at the end. So TN20004 is Coffee County, 20005 is Franklin County, and each of those is going to be unique, and that might come in handy as well. So I just wanted to point that stuff out really quick. We'll come back to the rest of this here in a moment. And let me switch over to the T in Department of Labor and Workforce Development so we can look at some of the test sessions that I've created. So before we talk about this, I just want to, again, make a quick distinction in terminology here. So TABE uses the term test session differently from how we have described a test session with the CASAS. With CASAS, a test session was really more of a configuration of settings that could be pushed out to a computer testing session. So in essence, you would say, let's have computers 1, 2, 3, and 4 deliver the CASAS appraisal and pretest, and then students would log on and take those predetermined tests. With the TABE, this process is a little different. The test sessions that you create will result in a unique username and password combination for each student that you add to that session. And when the student enters that username and password into the computer will then recognize which test to administer. So in the first example, the proctor is telling the computer what test to give. And in the second, the student is telling the computer which test to give. It's a subtle difference in process, but nonetheless, it's pretty important to note. Okay, so now that I've droned on and on about terminology, let's look at some test sessions and talk about how to create all of that. So I'm going to click on Show Sessions right here. Just going to show a few different sessions that I've already created. You can see the district and school and session name, which assessment was given, and all of that stuff. You see all of these different buttons here and action. All of these are going to do something different. So here's where I can actually edit the session details. Here is where I can export those details to like an Excel document. I can actually copy this session as well. I can view the ticket status, which is something that we'll look at here in a little bit. This is where you can find the usernames and passwords for students. Same thing here. You can look at the usernames and passwords and print off any usernames and passwords or any students that are signed up for this session. And then right here, you can actually delete any sessions that you have made. Notice some of these things are grayed out, so I cannot delete any sessions that are considered in progress, or I can't delete any of these paper-based sessions. So once a test session is started, you can't delete it. So the only test sessions that I can get rid of are test sessions that say not started right there. So I've named some of these sessions here, and notice my naming convention that I have going on. I'm saying pre-test, and here's the date. Or we have a post-test, and this is for a student called Buddy Wiseman on January the 9th, 2019. We have another post-test here for Elvis Freestyle, which is on January 11th, 2019, and another pre-test, and another pre-test. Here, the any paper-based test administrations that you end up scoring through the DRC portal already have a unique name, so I didn't actually name these. It just kind of came like that whenever we scanned them in to the system. So let's show you how to create one of these test sessions really quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click down here on Add Session, which will pull up a box where we can view all of the different parameters for our test session. So let's first name the session. Let's pretend that this is a pre-test. Let's pretend that we're creating a session for pre-testing or intake testing. So we'll call this a pre-test for, let's say, there we are, January 3rd, 2019. Let's say we had a pre-test then. We have a couple of different options here. So we have the locator, 11 and 12, that we can give. And if I choose this, that's only going to give me an option to give the locator exam. So it's not going to go into the TABE 11 or the TABE 12 or anything like that. So if we just wanted to give the locator test, we could do that. But more often than not, this is going to be the option that we're going to want to choose for intake testing. So I'll choose TABE 11. And then over here is where we could give the different kinds of tests for TABE 11. And what we're probably going to see more often than not is we're going to choose this auto locator test, which is going to pull up all three subjects of TABE. What's going to happen here is it will deliver the locator test and then automatically place students into the correct level based on their locator scores. So for this, let's say that we're just doing a test session for reading and math. So I'm going to take away the language right there. So we just have reading and math selected right here. And then we have a beginning date and an ending date, which automatically gets set to these dates. Don't ask me why, but that's just the dates that end up getting selected. And then we have down here where we can actually add students to the test session. So let me just find some students here, and want to point out something really quick is you notice there's no students right here that pulled up. So there's a couple different things to consider right here. First of all, whenever I logged into the system, it's automatically going to place me as the teacher here. Well, I don't have any students under me in the DRC portal. So one thing that I'm going to need to do is instead of having it select me, I'm going to have it select all. And now I can choose Find Students, which should pull up every student that we've put into the DRC portal for this particular school. So this is just for this particular school, and here's all of the students. So let's find a student. Let's add some students to this testing session. Let's see. Let's scroll down. Let's choose, how about this guy, Ace Holster. Let's say this is a student we need to add to this pre-testing session. I'm going to choose this arrow, this single arrow over here, and it's going to add him over here to this box right here. If we want to, we can add multiple students instead of just adding them one at a time. Let's choose Rashad Ashik. And if I wanted to choose another student, I would just hold the control button down, which you can't see me doing, but I promise I'm doing. And let's choose Clementine Clemens. And how about Buckley Corningstone as well? So I can add all three of those students that are highlighted by just hitting the control button on my keyboard and then clicking on each of their names. And then I will hit Add Selected, and it will add all three of those students over here as well. So that's good, something good to know. One thing we can do as well is we can search for students to add to the session. So let's say that this list was really long. We had 500 students in there. One thing we can do is search for their name. So let's search Hopkins. And I'm going to click on Find Students, and it'll search for whoever a student's name with Hopkins is. And here we are. We have Craven Hopkins. Let's add Craven to the list as well. So here we are. We have 5 students that we've added to this list. All of these 5 students will be taking this test. And I want to show you one other quick thing as well. Let's more often than not, we're going to have brand new students coming into our testing sessions, and they might not already have an account in the DRC portal. So what we'll need to do, instead of going in and adding them in a different space, we can actually just add them directly into the portal, as well as adding them into this session by clicking here on New Student. And this will actually pull up another box where we can see all of the students' information that we might want to enter. Here it is. And everything with a red star is something that we have to enter. So let's give this student a name. Let's say this person's name is Ignacio Roxbury. How about Ignacio Roxbury? So there's the last name. Here's the first name. And we don't need a middle initial. We don't need a student ID. But if you want to put a student ID in there, that is highly recommended as well. Notice the administration is automatically chosen for TABE. The school and the district are automatically chosen as well. That's good. So let's put in a date of birth. Let's say April the 29th, 1985. This is going to be an adult student, obviously, and he's a male student. So we'll click on Save here, and that will create Ignacio Roxbury as a student in the system, but also, if you see down here, add the student to the testing session, which is very convenient. So here we are. We have our pretest. It's for January 3rd. It's going to be the TABE auto locator for reading and math. It's only going to give students the option to take that auto locator and then directly place them into whatever TABE level that they tested into automatically. So more often than not, this is what we're going to be doing for our pre-testing especially. So let me click on Save here, and then let me show you what happens to all of this as well. So here we are. This green box is telling me that we have created this session successfully, which is great. And so now we need to find the session in this long list of sessions. So we know it's a pre-test. It was for January 3rd. Here we are. If I want to, I can go and edit those details that I just put in, or I can export them to an Excel document or copy the session again. Here is where I can actually print. So I'm going to click on this, which is going to pull up a separate page where you can see here's all of the students that we just added to this session. Here's their usernames and passwords, which are going to be automatically generated. And I'll make this a little bit bigger so we can see this. This is going to be automatically generated based on who you put into the session and based on the session. So this isn't going to be a student's username and password for their whole tenure in your program, just for this unique session. So we have, let's see over here, we had Rashad Ashik was the student's name, and his username is rashik1, and his password, which is always going to be kind of a random password here, is going to be a 4-letter word and a 4-digit number right here put together. So they all have unique usernames and passwords, and again, those are not unique to the student, but they're unique to the testing session, which is an important distinction to make. So we have all of those just listed here for us, and we can print off this page. If we would like to, we can actually print off these testing tickets as well and give them to the students, which will have their username and their password and which test that they're going to take. So we could give the students these TABE testing tickets as well if we were going to send them to a different testing lab or something like that. So here's all of the different students that we just added to that session and their testing tickets as well. And I want to show you one other place where you can locate that information. So here we are under our pretest. So we can also choose this option, which is to edit or print the ticket status. So I'll pull this box up here. And this is going to actually show us where the same exact information. So we can see the students' usernames. Notice it's the same username and password combination because we are in the same testing session. So let's say I just wanted to print off 1 or 2 of those. I could just check on those and hit print selected, which would pull up that same sheet of paper that we just were looking at, but only with Rashad Ashik's and Buckley Corningstone's information there. So I'm going to close out of this really quick. Just wanted to point that out. And one other thing that I want to point out here as well is that you may eventually have a long list of sessions right here. So instead of going and finding this pretest for January 3rd, 2019, one thing that I can do up here as well is to search for the test sessions. So what I need to do is find something to search by, and normally we'll use the session name. So this will be pretest for January 3rd, 2019. So let me type that in. Pretest 1/3/2019. Now I'm going to choose show sessions. And this should just show me, there we are, just the one session from January 3rd, 2019. So that's good. That's something that if we create a session, we want to search for it later, we can do that as well. I just want to point that out as well. One thing you can do too is notice I have these post tests, which we'll talk about here in a second. We have these post tests created, and if we wanted to search for just the post test for, say, Elvis Freestyle here, I could just search for, let's search for his last name, Freestyle. And this should pull up that as well. So you don't have to search for the full name, you just have to search for part of the session name right here if you wanted to edit or start or print off a ticket or whatever it is that you need to do. Okay, so let me back out of this, go back to our full session screen, and let's talk a little bit about creating a post-testing session now. So let me choose add session again. And for a post test, let's say this is for, let's say it's for a student that we just did, Clementine Clemens. Clementine, let's say it was from, I don't know, how about February the 5th, 2019. So most of our post testing is probably going to be done using a TABE 12, because we normally give them the TABE 11 on the first as a pretest. So we'll give them the TABE 12. And one thing to note here as well, we could give them the autolocator, but we're not going to do that for the post test because they don't need a locator for the post test. Let's say that Clementine Clemens was going to do the reading test and the math test. So these two options. Notice that it doesn't let me choose the autolocator as well as reading and math. So we're just going to do the reading and the math test. Let's say that her post test for reading will be the reading level D, and her post test for math will be the math level M. So I'm going to choose those two as an option. And one other thing that I want to note here is that you can't actually choose more than one test level at a time. So let me try to choose reading level D and reading level M. Notice that this switches back and forth. So I can only choose one level of reading, and then down here I can only choose one level of math at a time. So that's helpful to make sure that your students don't actually accidentally take the wrong level of test. So here we are. It's a post test for Clementine Clemens, reading and math, reading level D, math level M. We can change the date selection here as well. So let's say, again, this was going to be from February 5th. So let's choose February the 5th. Here we are. Let's say that's when it starts, and let's say it might actually take her a couple days. Let's say we end on February the 7th. We'll just kind of keep it open for those few days. So what we would need to do would be to find Clementine Clemens and add her to this session. So I'll choose all again here, and then I'm going to click, I could just search for her last name, since this session is just for her. So here she is. We will add her to this test session. She's over here in the box, and so I can choose save. If I wanted to save this session and then add another post-testing session for a different student, I could choose save and add another. We'll just choose save here, which will add the session over here under session details. And again, we see this green box telling us that we've done this successfully. So here we are. We want to find the post-testing session. There she is, Clementine Clemens. And prior to her taking this test, we would give her her username and password, which again, we can do in a couple ways, but this is probably the easiest, is just to look at where you can print it off. And here's her username and password, C Clemens3, password love4534. So I mentioned before that we've talked a lot about the best way to go about creating these test sessions. Essentially, the big question is broken down into three parts. Should we create one master testing session and put all the students into that session for a whole year? Or two, should we create smaller time-bound sessions like monthly sessions and then put all the students into that session for the month? Or three, should we just create a new test session every time we give a test? So there's pros and cons to all three scenarios, but at the end of the day, the easiest and best way that I think to go about doing this is to create a new session each time we give a test, whether it's for an intake, a group of students taking a pretest, or for an individual student taking a post-test, or however you would like to do that. I think the best way to do that is to give a new test for each testing event, we'll say. So for one, this actually ensures that you won't have a long list of students' usernames and passwords in here that haven't finished taking the test, which will make it easier to give the students the information that they need on testing day. Two, it actually also allows for you to give a brand new locator to a student who may be returning after being closed out, who might have already taken a locator test in the past. It also gives you a bit more data to examine around each unique testing session, as well as being able to do a quick locating of a test session results to communicate to students and teachers alike. So if we just wanted to see a quick post-test results for Buddy Wiseman, we could just search up here for Buddy Wiseman, which would pull up his post-tests. And if he had multiple post-tests here, we could view that here under test sessions. We can also view that stuff in test reports as well, but that's one thing as well that we could be able to do on this screen is just quickly at a glance see all the different post-tests, so long as we have a very strict naming convention. So the main drawback of doing this is that you're going to have a long list here of old test sessions eventually. After about a year, this will, be quite extensive and quite long. Now, remember, these test sessions are unique to each school or each site, so it's not like you're going to have all the different test sessions for all of your schools and all of your sites in the same place necessarily. This should be broken out into school. So that'll make that a little bit easier, but you can also always search the testing name or search the testing date range if you would like to narrow down these tests as well. So that's the main drawback here. So yeah, again, if we create a new session for each post-test that we give and we can name it after a student, then we can see the student's testing history, and we can of course they all see all that stuff in Jobs for TN, but there might be times that we want to view this in the DRC portal, not in reports, and so we can do that here as well. So that's the gist of the test session creation. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us or to TABE's customer support with any questions at all. And we'll be continuing to update this information as we go. Thanks for watching.